Friends and colleagues, welcome to Columbia Business News Recap for June 18th, 2023. Happy Father's Day. I'm recording this on a Sunday. It's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all you fathers, daddies, and poppies out there. This past week, Gustavo Petro, the president of Colombia, has been in Germany for different things, but he was at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung Institute in Germany, where he gave a speech. That's a foundation affiliated with the German Social Democrat movement and party. It's not a party organization, but it's like a foundation that's I guess aligned with that party. And Petro called for an end to free markets and lamented the fall of the Berlin Wall. So, I don't know how surprising it is that Petro would call for an end to free markets. He's a former guerrilla revolutionary. He's always been a leftist, as he calls it, but he said, and this is my translation, the fall of the Berlin Wall brought a wave of neoconservative, a destruction of the labor movement on a world scale, a formidable weakening and loss of left-wing values. So Petro thinks that, in his own words, the fall of the Berlin Wall was a terrible thing. Now, I'm old enough to remember when the wall fell. I don't remember what I was doing at the time or anything like that, but I remember in 1989, I was a student at the Ohio State University. Around that time, I got my first job in journalism as well. Remember following the events as they unfolded through the news and television. But for those of you who don't remember, and even for those of you who do, the Berlin Wall went up in 1961 in East Berlin. It lasted until 1989, and basically it imprisoned the residents of East Berlin, not allowing them to leave and escape to West Berlin or to escape outside of the Warsaw Pact. At that time, of course, post-World War II, you had the Soviet Union, and then you had their, for the most part, captive border puppet governments. You had, for example, Germany was split in half, so you had East Germany and West Germany. But then Berlin, which was inside of East Germany, it was further divided. So you had East Germany, which was under the kind of Soviet thumb, and then you had West Berlin, which was under control of the what had been the Allied forces. So basically Canada, United States, the UK, and France. And then you had other countries that were Yugoslavia, Poland, Romania, that were kind of under Soviet domination, even though they were nominally sovereign governments. But basically, people kept leaving East Berlin into West Berlin to escape because they didn't want to live under communism, of course. And it got so bad that to keep the workers from leaving this workers' paradise, the labor movement that Petro laments, the government put up a wall to keep the people from East Berlin from escaping and from leaving. According to the city of Berlin, I'll put the link to the Berlin city website where I got these statistics. About 100,000 East Berliners tried to escape between 1961 and 1989. 600 were shot and killed by the East German border guards. So I don't know what this tragedy for workers was that Petro, Comrade Petrovsky, is talking about. All this worker paradise and all this, the tragedy, I think, was the encirclement and the captivity of citizens and residents If it's such a paradise, why were they trying to flee? We didn't have a bunch of people, maybe criminals on the run from the law or something like that, but we didn't have any kind of massive movements of people escaping to East Germany to live in this workers' paradise. We didn't have people escaping to Cuba, for example, to live under the Revolucion. Um, so we had people who were risking their lives. Over 600 lost their lives trying to escape from this great workers' paradise that Petro laments. So I think his words are really interesting, lamenting the fall of the Berlin Wall. So tragedy for workers. The fall of the Berlin Wall, according to Petro, was a tragedy for workers. They were all workers. You kind of had to work. You didn't really have a choice. Why were they willing to die to escape to the neoliberalisms or the neocons, as Petro calls it, that Petro hates so much as a former armed guerrilla himself. So his comments were, I think, kind of interesting, not at all surprising for those of you who follow, who have followed his political trajectory. When I first moved to Colombia, he was the mayor of Bogota. I lived in Bogota at the time. I lived there before eventually, well, actually not eventually, but kind of after, as soon as my lease expired, I moved to Medellin. But lest you think that I'm part of the capitalist cabal and I don't know, I just have it in for Petro. Let's move on to former Vice President Marta Lucia Ramirez, who was she was the Vice President and Foreign Minister under the last president, Ivan Duque. She, of course, comes from the right wing of the political spectrum, but she's really pretty pissed off and fed up with I think journalists in general these days, because remember, she was already involved in one political scandal. We covered this in Finance Colombia. Inside Crime did an excellent job covering it. In fact, she kind of threatened them while she was in the government. So you talk about government impression. She went after them, and they stood their ground, and she had to back down. She tried to sue them for defamation because they reported, they kind of, I would say, broke the story that she, her husband was a partner, is a partner in a company called Hitos Urbanos. Hitos Urbanos was building a luxury project there in Bogota, and turns out that they were associated, or her husband was associated in this venture with Memo Fantasma. Memo Fantasma is was a very, well, he's still alive, but he's a very low profile alleged criminal who was both a paramilitary and a narco trafficker. According to Inside Crime, he's now been charged. He was deported from Spain, or he returned from Spain to face charges. And he was a partner in this luxury real estate. It was like an office tower building with Marta Lucia's husband. And his name is Alvaro Rincon, her husband. And so now his same firm, Alvaro Rincon's firm, Hitos Urbanos, is involved with developing a hotel on San Andrés Island in the Caribbean. It's an island, San Andrés and Providencia make up an archipelago. They're lovely. Really would recommend visiting as tourists to anyone. But they're developing a hotel called Gran Sirenas. Gran Sirenas is part of it's like a hotel that's being developed in conjunction with the Spanish chain. The land and the hotel development already was facing controversy because there are accusations that they took over beach property that belonged to the public, and they did so inappropriately, and that has already been a source of litigation. But now the hotel is accused, or the construction project is accused of violating the height regulations, and they were ordered to demolish the seventh and eighth floors of the property that is under construction. The property is supposed to be open this fall. It's now kind of unknown if it's going to be open. So Marta Lucia has been reaching out or lashing out at the media for reporting this. I think that someone said that she was an owner, and Colombia is not a community property country like you have certain states in the U.S. that are community property. So basically here husbands and wives can own their property separately. So she's mad because people are saying that she owns some of this property, which apparently legally she doesn't. It's her husband's property. But she said that in a statement, her life has been transparent and hardworking and having no facts or grounds to question my public or private life. The political detractors who hate everything that happened in Colombia have dedicated themselves to attacking my family and mainly my husband, who, like me, is a hardworking and upright person. So she's really kind of in a foul mood right now because she feels that she's under siege. And as they say, when it rains, it pours. All the way from Naples, Italy, former Prime Minister Massimo D'Alema and Leonardo, which is a defense contracting and aviation company, their CEO, Alessandro Profumo, along with Fincantieri, which makes naval ships, their general manager, Giuseppe Giordo, are under indictment by the Naples prosecutor for conspiring to sell 4 billion euros of military equipment to the Colombian government. Now, here's the thing. Also named in the indictment over there in Napoli, over there in Naples, are the Senate delegates from Colombia, Germán Monroy Ramirez and Francisco Hoya Prieto, and a familiar name, Marta Lucia Ramirez, known as Martucci's to many who are fond of her, but the same vice president who was really pissed off at the media for bugging her husband and for bugging her. Turns out she is now under indictment in this investigation that's taking place in Italy, this corruption investigation that involves these defense contractors. Now, what they're saying is that for this 4 billion euro contract that was going to go through, they were going to pay bribes of about 10%. So what's that, 40 million, 400 million, to several government officials in both Italy and Colombia through a U.S. law firm based in Miami. And so it doesn't appear that the deal actually happened. Colombia, as far as I know, did not buy any planes from Leonardo. Leonardo makes some really cool aircraft. They make some interesting things like trainers and light fighters, things like that. Fincantieri. We went to a Colombia Mar, the naval convention this year. We did an interview earlier with the organizers. That's available, but Fincantieri is a Italian naval contractor. They make warships and things like that, frigates and corvettes and those kinds of things. But so I think that Marta Lucia Ramirez feels embattled, but maybe that's kind of we'll see. We don't know. She is not proven guilty in anything yet, but her name is in the indictment, and so not necessarily a stress-free week for her. In Tibú, which is in Norte de Santander, not too far from Cucuta, near the Venezuelan border, the ELN and FARC dissidents inaugurated a road that they built connecting several villages. They had a big public speech, and so part of Gustavo Petro's total peace initiative, he's trying to make peace with the ELN and the FARC dissidents that didn't lay down their arms in the 2016 peace accords. And so he's been trying to have a ceasefire and negotiate and come to good terms with the ELN and the FARC, while they have apparently taken over parts of the country, kind of reminiscent to how things were back in the 1990s. And they're even running the governments and the local governments in certain areas. They're making public speeches and proclamations and apparently even building roads with no presence of the de jure Colombian government, the Colombian government that's based in Bogota, that's supposed to be kind of the government of the whole country. So here you have parades and speeches like their politicians taking place, embarrassing the national Colombian government and the military. The defense minister has come out kind of admonishing the army, but apparently there is no army presence there. So it looks like this total peace thing. On one hand, I guess you could say it's if this is Petro's vision of it, you've got peace there because the rebels have taken over, the insurgents, the guerrillas have taken over, and there's no government there other than them. So maybe if his idea is of total peace is ceding the parts of the country or the country to the guerrillas, of which he was once one, then I guess you could say it's happening. But I don't know if this is what most people or a lot of people had in mind. It's an embarrassment for the government, but it is a reality. There are parts of the country where the government is not present, and the rebels are the de facto government. Now, you can argue and you could say that this was the case before in certain areas, and you would certainly be right. So this is not anything entirely new under the Petro government. That is true. This took place. Ivan Duque's administration was notoriously ineffective for fighting insurgencies in the sense that both everything from coca production to the levels of insurgent-related crime went up during the Duque administration, but still the insurgents are making a mockery of the Colombian government. So as he tries to negotiate some type of total peace with them, we'll see how that works out, because these rebel guerrillas are negotiating now from a position of strength. So let's see what happens there. It's been a quiet week, relatively quiet in business. Last week we talked about the scandal that went from being like a Nannygate scandal to now they're calling it the 15 million because of the supposed 15 million pesos, 15 billion pesos in illegal money that went into Gustavo Petro's campaign, broken off by Armando Benedetti, who was the former president of the Senate and Gustavo Petro's campaign manager, and until recently ambassador to Venezuela, a job that he did not want. He wanted something more kind of in the action, I guess, a cabinet minister position, and it seems like he was very sour not having gotten that. So in his rage, according to him, a drunken rage, according to Benedetti himself, he threatened his former secretary and then Gustavo Petro's chief of staff, Laura Sanabria, with revealing the 15 billion pesos in illegal campaign money, saying, "I'll sink all of us. I don't care. Osama bin Laden didn't care about his image when he sank the Twin Towers. So do you think I care about my image?" That's what he said, translated, of course. There are rumors, I have not been able to confirm them, that he may have even gone to the U.S., but what we do know last week is that in the midst of all this, according to him, he had death threats and things like that, but he went to Turkey. According to him, he went to Turkey just because he wanted to watch soccer games. Maybe that's true. Maybe he already had it planned to go to Turkey to watch soccer games, but the timing is interesting. Since then, we haven't heard from him. He was supposed to come back to Colombia and testify in this case to prosecutors. There has been no news that he has done so, and he hasn't shown up publicly, so we don't know what's going on there. Of course, the lieutenant colonel who was a witness to the origin of the scandal, which were wiretaps to Laura Sanabria's nanny was found dead. There have been some sources who have told journalists down here that the money that the nanny was accused of stealing was not Laura Sanabria's, but was in fact part of this allegedly illicit cash. There's been no proof of that, but that is one version of the events that has come out. Ultra Air is, of course, they ceased flying, and there has been little expectation that they will return as an airline. Airlines often these days follow an asset-light model where they don't own the airplanes, they lease the airplanes, they have a staff. They tend not to own a lot of tangible assets like infrastructure. They'll own maybe a few vehicles and things like that. Their offices are leased. For example, Viva was leasing offices in Medellin from WeWork, actually in Poblado. So there has been talk, though, of investors possibly buying the Ultra brand and resuscitating the airline. We're working on confirming that. We have heard who those investors might be and have reached out to them, and maybe by the next Colombia Business News recap, we'll have some news for you on that. So otherwise, it's been a relatively quiet week with the president off in Europe. So everybody enjoy Father's Day. It's kind of vacation time down here in Colombia. In June, a lot of the schools let out for a break, and then there are 2 national holidays this month. And so it's kind of a quiet time when a lot of people are kind of launching their traditional summer holiday and that kind of thing like that. But we're still here hard at work, and we'll continue to keep you updated and abreast of all the developments at Finance Colombia. Remember, you can subscribe for free at fcsubscribe.com or simply go to Finance Colombia. Colombia is always with an O, not with a U. And also remember to hire bilingual talent. Use Empleo Bilingüe, empleobilingüe.com, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again. Stay safe, everyone.